Welcome to the deep dive. You gave us the blueprints, the articles, the interviews, all the research, and today we're doing a massive, thrilling shortcut into the sound and really the resilience of the Bonnevilles.
Yes.
This is a two-piece garage punk blues band. They're out of Northern Ireland. And our mission today is pretty simple. We want to understand how Andrew McGibbon Jr. on guitar and vocals and Chris McMullen on drums create a sound that is just so gigantic.
With so little gear.
Exactly, with minimal gear. And what their relentless, independent touring strategy tells us about, just surviving in the music industry today.
It's a great topic because they are this ultimate contradiction. I mean, they're minimalist in their setup, just two guys, but they are absolutely maximalist in their sound.
Totally.
You really need to hear this comparison right away. Critically, their sound has been described as, and I quote, Hound Dog Taylor and R.L. Burnside using Black Sabbath's equipment.
That is the perfect quote.
Isn't it? That friction is exactly where the magic is.
Because you can feel that deep, greasy Delta blues tradition, but it's just delivered with the sheer volume and the weight of heavy metal.
Exactly.
So before we even get into the music itself, let's talk about their identity. And it starts with the name. Most people hear the Bonnevilles and they assume, a cool vintage car, maybe a motorcycle.
Well, yeah, it's some kind of American muscle.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is a lot more aspirational, I think.
Yeah.
The name has nothing to do with the vehicle.
Yeah.
It's inspired by the Bonneville Salt Flats.
Yeah.
In Utah, the legendary place for land speed records.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, McGibbon was just fascinated by the stories of those pioneers, guys like Donald Campbell. So it's a very intentional nod to that glamorous, risk-taking American spirit. It's a perfect metaphor for a band that just has to operate at top speed all the time just to stay afloat.
I love that. They name themselves after a place where records are set. It ties their whole identity to pushing limits. Okay, let's unpack the core ingredients of this sound because it is, like you said, defined by these conflicting influences. On one side, you've got the deepest Delta roots.
The foundation is pure history. McGibbon traces his whole path back to a copy of Robert Johnson that he found in a library when he was 16.
At 16.
Yeah, and he calls it the most life-changing musical event he ever experienced. You can hear Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters for sure. But the real cornerstone, the album he calls his favorite of all time, is R.L. Burnside's A-Ass Pocket of Whiskey.
Oh, you can absolutely hear that raw, cyclical rhythm of Burnside just bleeding into their songs. But if that's all they played, they'd just be a heritage act.
Exactly.
So what gives them that incredible volume, that noise? That has to come from somewhere else.
And that grit is layered on, and it's layered on heavily, from the rock and punk side. McGibbon talks about 90s grunge, specifically Soundgarden's Super Unknown.
Really?
Yeah, he pulls inspiration from Kim Thayil's unique sort of Eastern-tinged guitar sounds. And then the really critical ingredient, the Detroit garage punk scene of the early 2000s.
Okay, so the White Stripes, the Black Keys, those are obvious comparisons because they're also blues duos.
Right. But they cite the Detroit Cobras and, crucially, the Dirt Bombs as huge influences. McGibbon basically said, look, if the Dirt Bombs would sing a song, it's good enough for us. And that link, that explains the aggressive, driving energy they bring to that old blues framework.
And that framework is the two-piece structure. I mean, logistically, it's brilliant. It's easier to tour, less gear, cheaper flights.
For sure. But creatively, it is severely constraining, especially for the main songwriter like McGibbon, who even admits sometimes he just wishes he had a bassist to fill out the low end.
That's the key creative limitation, right? But that constraint forces them to be inventive. They can't just rely on, standard tuning or traditional rhythm section. So how do they actually make up for that missing bass?
Well, they fill it by just maximizing the tools they have. McGibbon has to play way heavier. He probably uses specific string gauges or certain amp settings that let his low strings really resonate like a bass.
I mean about the drums.
Well, this is what's fascinating about the duo dynamic itself. Chris McMullen's background isn't blues, it's heavy metal.
Ah, there it is.
That's where the tremendous weight comes from. That sheer power in the drums anchors McGibbon's blues playing.
Yeah.
And it just makes sure they never, ever sound thin.
The power to weight ratio is just incredible. Okay, let's talk about performance longevity, because when you play music this raw night after night, your body takes a beating, especially your voice.
It absolutely does. And McGibbon shared this really powerful story about it. For years, he was just shredding his voice on tour. Especially on these high-effort songs like 10,000, he'd lose his voice all the time.
So what did you do?
He found a really unique, almost ironic solution.
It wasn't a vocal coach.
Not exactly. It's the drummer's wife, Shelley. And she just happens to be a speech therapist. She noticed the strain and gave him, specialized literature and vocal exercises.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is where that whole myth of raw rock and roll just collides with, like, actual professional discipline. McGibbon took it to heart. He started studying the vocal techniques of classic singers like David Bowie and Frank Sinatra.
No way.
Yes. And he started using that discipline in his own performances, which let him maintain his range without all the stress on his voice. Such a great insight. Even in the grittiest garage punk, you need professional science to survive.
That commitment to longevity, that's a huge piece of practical advice for any artist listening.
It just shows that discipline and swagger, they're not mutually exclusive.
So let's shift to how they actually built this machine. The Bonnevilles formed after McGibbon left his old band, The Childish Thoughts, where he was, funnily enough, the bass player.
Right. So he tried a couple of drummers before McMullen officially joined. And the moment he became a permanent member is a great bit of band folklore. It happened live, on air, during a BBC radio interview.
I love that. And their strategy from day one was super intentional. McGibbon knew that in Northern Ireland, if you don't have a reputation, you won't get a proper deal. So in 2007, he started his own label, Motor Science Records.
And their key strategic move was avoiding that local band trap. They deliberately built their reputation abroad first. They hammered tours across Europe, across England, before they even tried to demand local recognition.
So they came back as a known quantity.
Exactly. They made sure that when the local scene finally paid attention, they were already this globally recognized act. That is some serious foresight.
And it paid off big time when the industry finally came calling. They ended up signing with the legendary U.S. indie label, Alive Natural Sound Records.
One with the Black Keys, James Legge, yeah. They got the deal after meeting other label mates at festivals in Europe.
But the detail that makes this whole part of their story feel almost, I don't know, mythical is where they actually signed the contract.
Well, this is the best part. In 2015, they're playing the Deep Blues Fest. And they signed the deal at Robert Johnson's Crossroads in Clarksdale, Mississippi.
It's just cinematic. For a band that pulls so much from Delta blues history, signing their biggest contract literally at the Crossroads, I mean, the most iconic spot in all of blues mythology, it just elevates their story into legend.
It really does. It's like the deal they struck with the music itself.
Okay, let's track their creative evolution because they haven't stood still. The album they signed with, Arrow Pierce My Heart, that was in 2016, and it had a darker, more primal, kind of a more traditional Bonnevilles sound.
It did. But then, in 2018, they released Dirty Photographs, and it was a really deliberate, stark shift, a much sunnier, more upbeat record.
Right. Moving from that dark, primal sound to something so upbeat, was that a risk for them?
It was, but it came from a really personal place. McGibbon said the title track was basically a saucy love letter to his wife, Janie. He wrote it because he wanted to make a song she could actually dance to.
Ah, that's great.
It shows his evolution as a songwriter, moving beyond just raw emotion to actually crafting something fun and specific. And what's just as wild is the pace. They recorded that entire album, Dirty Photographs, in just 2 days.
2 days. I mean, that speed has to contribute to the raw sound. It's less about perfection, more about capturing that immediate energy.
Exactly. It speaks to how tight they are as a duo and their desire to keep the recording as close to their live sound as possible. But, fast forward to 2025, and their newest stuff, Age of Monsters, and you see the pendulum swing right back.
It feels like a return to much weightier themes. The new album is full of politically and socially relevant stuff. There are anti-war statements, themes of working-class solidarity.
On tracks like Awaken from Slumber, yeah. And they even get into specific local environmental activism. The track, Not a Penny for the Earl, is all about the Luth Knee campaign.
So they're not trapped in one tone. They can use that power for personal tributes one year and for huge social concerns the next.
And all while keeping that signature high-voltage blues structure.
So we have the sound, we have the strategy. Now let's talk about the brutal physical reality of this career. This is the independent grind. McGibbon says touring is just non-negotiable for them. It's a badge of honor, paying dues.
Right.
His advice to young musicians is basically, get a driving license in a van and get out there.
It sounds romantic, but the sources paint a really stark picture of the physical toll. McGibbon's very open about the demands of touring Europe, which often means he's the one driving a manual transmission van for 9, 10, sometimes 12 hours a day.
He told this intense story about collapsing after one tour, just completely exhausted. He thought he might be having a heart attack. It forced him to really confront his physical limits.
And that collapse led to this really painful realization for him. Rock and roll at this relentless level was just incompatible with his other great passion, which was competitive cycling.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he couldn't maintain the level of fitness and recovery he needed on the road. He had to choose the band over the bikes. That's a real-life sacrifice that so many artists have to make.
It's a good reminder that the myth of the open road is often paid for with just extreme exhaustion. And that's compounded by the mental toll of, financial insecurity.
Absolutely. The financial pressure of being an indie artist, even on a great label like Alive, it's constant. McGibbon's been super transparent about the struggle to provide for his wife, Janie, and his kids, Summer and Lily. Sometimes they'd go months with no money coming in.
And the very infrastructure they rely on is, well, it's crumbling. Particularly in the UK, we're seeing this crisis of venue closures, and it's having a real practical effect on their ability to actually work.
The fewer venues there are, the more bands are competing for the same slots. McGibbon says it's forced them to start booking tours up to 9 months in advance. Think about that.
9 months.
They used to book 3 months out. Now they need nearly a year of lead time just to get a run of shows. That kind of instability makes it impossible to plan your life, your finances.
And beyond venues, they've had huge problems with traditional distribution. McGibbon's been really vocal about his frustration with distributors who, he claims, just do nothing for the band.
His quote was, "They do fuck all." They don't pay reliably. And in one incredible story, a distributor tried to charge the Bonnevilles to take back 10,000 pounds worth of their own stock.
Their own record.
Their own records, which the distributor was then just planning to burn.
That is just outrageous. You can feel the frustration there. It completely explains why they've shifted their whole focus.
It pushed them right back to pure DIY independence for survival. Now they just deal directly with indie record shops like Seismic Records and Leamington Spa, or they just sell from their own online store. It cuts out the middleman who is actively hurting their business.
So if the modern industry is that unstable, what happens when a global crisis hits, like the pandemic?
Well, it just reinforced the vital role of their community. McGibbon was clear. The financial support they got through fan tips during their live-streamed gigs was the literal difference between paying their bills and not. It really underscores a crucial point for you, for anyone listening. Those small contributions, those $5 tips, they aren't just bonuses. They are the absolute foundation of a touring band's financial stability.
And that really is the story of the Bonnevilles. It's one of fierce, tactical independence, creative agility, and a deep commitment to their roots. And they've maintained it all despite these intense physical and financial demands.
They've constantly had to evolve their business model from self-release to a major indie contract and then right back to prioritizing direct sales.
And their commitment to their community goes way beyond just their own survival. For final provocative thought, you should really consider the power of local activism in building your own music infrastructure.
Absolutely. When the last live music venue in their hometown of Lurgan closed down, McGibbon and his friend Richie didn't just complain. They acted. They started the Black Cat Club in 2020, specifically to reopen a space for live music.
And the local response to that, it's just a powerful blueprint for how fans can truly sustain the arts.
Their first gig, of course, was canceled because of the lockdown. But of the 120 people who had bought tickets, not one person asked for a refund.
Not a single one.
Not one. They all told McGibbon and Richie to keep the money. They said they were supporting the club because the town needed it, and they needed that venue to exist when things opened back up.
That collective refusal to ask for a refund, that quiet but deep commitment to rebuilding their own arts infrastructure, it just shows you the power that every single listener has. They didn't wait for a label or a government grant. They took ownership of their own scene. It's a powerful lesson in making the music culture you want to exist.